Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Exploring Medico. Today we are going to start an important system in the physiology, that is respiratory system. Many of the students generally have doubts in the respiratory system. So if any student who has doubt, please watch this video. If any student is preparing for the competitive exams, then also you can watch this video if you have any doubts. And if you want the note of this topic, you can ask in the comment section. And in case of any doubt, feel free to ask in the comment section. We are here to help you. Also, one of the more thing I wanted to say that whatever I am explaining in the physiology, make sure you have a very good concentration. Don't by heart the topics. Try to understand. If you will understand the content, it will be easier for you to write in the exams. But if you will think to by heart for a short period of time, it will be easier for you. You will think that I know, but after a long time you will forget it, whatever you have learned. So it's better you understand, make your own notes. If you want this note, ask it. We are ready to provide you. Okay, so now let's start the respiratory system. Now we will start with the functional anatomy. Today's our chapter is physiological anatomy of respiratory system. So we'll start with the functional anatomy. Now, the chief organs of respiratory system are right and left lungs. As we all know, the oxygen in the atmospheric air reaches the lungs by passing through a series of respiratory passages, which also serves for the removal of carbon dioxide from the alveoli to the atmosphere. It means the exchange of gases is done in a series way, which you are going to learn, which is called respiratory passages. So now we are going to learn it. The respiratory system also includes a pump that ventilates the lung. This pump consists of the chest wall and respiratory muscles. Remember this. Ventilation is done by a pump that is attached to chest wall and respiratory muscles. There are two types, inspiratory respiratory muscles, expiratory respiratory muscles. You learn in this chapter in the ahead topics. Now, respiratory passages. Now our first respiratory passage is nasal cavities. The air enters the body through right and left exterior nares, which open into right and left nasal cavities. From the outer to the inner, that is right and left, interior to exterior nares, the air enters through the posterior, that is internal, as the nasal cavity opens into pharynx. So after nares comes the pharynx. Now nasal cavity serves following functions. Now we will discuss the functions of nasal cavities. Nasal cavities warm up air to the body temperature and humidify the air to 100% saturation. Means it functions to humidify air. It takes the air to the ground substance and it also warms up the body temperature. Nasal cavities. It cleans and filters the air of its particular content by channeling the air through tortuous part between the turbinates and prevent the foreign bodies to reach the alveoli. So nasal cavity acts as a turbinate. You have seen how water flow in the turbinate. Same way the nasal cavities acts as a turbinate which prevent the foreign particles to enter into the alveoli. Now the larger particles that are greater than 10 micrometer diameter are filtered by air in the nostrils, whereas the smaller particles 2 to 10 micrometer diameter enter the bronchi. They initiate reflex coughing and also by ciliary axillary activity move them away. Now smaller particles enter into the bronchi. When they enter into the bronchi, you will be having a coughing reflex. Sometimes you might feel when you drink the water so fastly or while talking you sneeze or you have a coughing system. So this is about it, and that is known as ciliary escalator activity, which move away the particle outside the body. That is smaller particles. Getting it? So clear? Now pharynx. From above downwards, The pharynx is divided into nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Remember the division of pharynx, three divisions: nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Air from the nasal cavities enters the nasopharynx and passes down to the oropharynx and laryngopharynx to larynx. From the mouth, the air can directly pass to oropharynx. There are two ways. One is the pathway of this three layer and one is directly to oropharynx. So you can see in the figure, anterior nerve, posterior nerve. Then it comes the nasopharynx, then oropharynx, then laryngopharynx, and then larynx. The system is like this way. Now larynx. It is continuous above with the laryngopharynx and below with trachea. Larynx continues with trachea, you can see. The air passes through the glottis. Glottis is what? The triangular space between vocal cords into the trachea. So now air passes through the trachea via larynx. Apart from being a respiratory passage, the larynx acts as a voice box. So larynx is known as voice box. Now many times the question you have seen in the earlier classes also, and it is asked many times that what serves as both airway and foodway. Then it is pharynx, and only airway, that is larynx, that is voice box. So it comes trachea. Now next, this is IMP topic, that is tracheobronchial tree. The air passages between trachea and alveoli divides 23 times to form extensive tracheobronchial tree. So there are 23 divisions from trachea to alveoli of the respiratory passages, and it is known as generations. These multiple divisions greatly increase in the total cross-sectional area, means they increase in the diameter way of the airway from 2.5 cm square in the trachea to 11,800 cm square in the alveoli. Means starting from the trachea, it is 2.5 cm square. While reaching to the alveoli, the surface area increases to 11,800 cm square. Consequently, the velocity of airflow in the small airway declines to very low values. Means where there is less airflow, there starts from the trachea. Velocity is less, it means to say that. The 23 generation divides of the tracheobronchial tree have been numbered as. Now we will see the tracheobronchial tree. First let us see the explanation, then we will see the diagram. So first, trachea is designated as generation 0. So as we have seen that it starts from the trachea, that is 2.5 cm square, which is generation 0. Do remember this, it is very much IMP. Then the principal bronchi, that is right and left bronchi, which are two major divisions of trachea, constituent first generation. So the principal bronchi constituent first generation. Then comes the lobar bronchi, which are divisions of the principal bronchus from the second generation. So lobar bronchi constitute the second generation. Then segmental bronchi, which are further division of each lobar bronchis, form third generation. Each segmental bronchus divided into several generations of branches that ultimately end in very small tubes called bronchioles. So after segmental bronchi comes bronchioles. Then terminal bronchioles is the name given to 16th generation of the divisions. Up to this generation of division, no exchange of gases is possible. Till 16th generation, remember, no exchange of gases is done. First to 16th generation. So first trachea, then principal bronchi, then lobar, then segmental, then terminal. Then comes the respiratory bronchial, is the name given to 17th to 22nd generation. These are labeled as respiratory bronchioles because some exchange of gases is possible in the alveolar tubes. Respiratory bronchi is also called respiratory gases. Exchange is done over there. Getting it? Exchange of gases is done, but not entire. Somewhat. Then comes alveolar ducts, and in the alveoli or the alveolar sacs of the 23rd generation division. It is here out the O2 and CO2 exchange. The final gas exchange occurs in the alveoli, that is 23rd generation. So these were generation. Now let us understand in the diagram. First is trachea, that is 0 generation, you can see. Then comes left bronchus, that is first generation. Then lobar bronchus, which are 2, that is second generation. Then right and left lobar bronchi divides into segmental bronchi, that is third generation. Then it divides into terminal bronchial, that is 16th generation. Remember, from third it comes to 16, between generation is there. But then terminal bronchial, then comes the respiratory bronchial, that is 17 to 22, where little exchange of gas occurs. Then comes alveoli alveolar duct, that is 23rd generation. Clear? Now one more thing to remember here, that is pathway of respiratory system. That is nasal cavities, that is exterior and interior, posterior, exterior, whatever you say. From nasal cavities it comes to pharynx. In pharynx you can write that type, laryngopharynx, oropharynx. From pharynx it comes to larynx. From larynx it comes to trachea. From trachea it comes to bronchi. From bronchi it comes to bronchioles. From bronchioles it comes to alveoli, and from alveoli it comes to lungs. This is the respiratory pathway, how particles in air travel. Remember this, okay? This was all about tracheobronchial. Sometimes short notice is also asked in tracheobronchial tree. Now next, this is also MP. Thus, from the functional point of view, tracheobronchial tree can be divided into two major zones. First is conducting zone. From the air passage is formed from the 16th generation passage, it only transports gases from the end to the exterior, that is outside. Till the 16th generation, gases are only transported outside. Thus, conducting zone starts from trachea and ends up to terminal bronchi, that is from 0th generation to 16th generation, that is trachea to terminal bronchus. Since no exchange of gases is possible here, so starting from nose to the terminal bronchus forms the called dead space. So this conducting zone is also known as dead space because there is no exchange of gases over here, which has total capacity of approximately 150 milliliter. Remember this, okay? So conducting zone starts from trachea, ends to terminal bronchus, also known as dead space. 150 milliliter is the capacity and has no exchange of gases. Now respiratory zone is the remaining 7 generations of tracheobronchial tree, which includes the respiratory bronchioles, that is 17 to 22nd generation, and alveolar ducts, that is 23rd. From the alveoli, from the respiratory zone, where exchange of gases occur and its volume is approximately 4 liter. Do remember. So two zone, conducting zone and respiratory zone. These zone are divided from the tracheobronchial tree itself only. So do remember this tracheobronchial tree, that is 0th generation, 1st generation. So trachea, left principal bronchus, lobar bronchus, segmental bronchus, and terminal bronchus. This all constituent what? Conducting zone. And these constituent respiratory zone. Now we will discuss the histological features of tracheobronchial tree. Cartilaginous rings. Histological means cell-wise details. You learn in the anatomy also, histology. First is cartilaginous rings are present in the trachea and initial bronchi. Remember, where trachea and initial bronchi. Trachea is 0 generations. Now also start remembering generations also. When it comes trachea, bronchi, bronchial, you should think, okay, trachea, so 0 generation. That way you should try to recall a few generations. These are absent in terminal bronchioles and respiratory bronchioles. So cartilaginous rings are absent in where? Terminal bronchioles and respiratory bronchioles. It is important for competitive exam, Viva, MCQs, everywhere. Remember, okay? The cartilaginous rings of trachea are incomplete on their posterior aspect. So in the posterior aspect, they are incomplete. They are not completely formed. This allows some contraction of trachea, but tracheal lumen cannot be completely obliterated easily. Minor contraction of trachea occurs due to absence of the posterior aspect. Do remember this. Now smooth muscles. End of cartilaginous rings of trachea are approximated by transverse smooth muscle fibers. So now cartilaginous rings of trachea is from which muscles is there? Transverse smooth muscle fibers. There in terminal bronchioles they are present in large amount and form a sphincter. Sphincter means valve, which allow the passage. So smooth muscle fibers are present and also in the terminal bronchioles they are of high number. Smooth muscles are not present in alveoli. Do remember. Now in alveoli smooth muscles is absent, like cartilaginous rings are absent in terminal bronchioles and respiratory bronchioles. Now epithelial lining. In trachea, large bronchi is columnar and becomes cuboidal. Remember, large bronchi is columnar and then it becomes cuboidal till reaching to bronchioles. and alveoli is simple squamous. So do remember, okay? Bronchi is columnar. Bronchioles is cuboidal. And alveoli constituent squamous. This way you should remember this, 3 of 3. The epithelial cells of tracheobronchial are ciliated. Cilia are absent in alveoli. Efficiency of ciliated cells of trachea and bronchi in propelling mucus and waste product is of high order. Because ciliated cells of trachea and bronchi propellate mucus, waste product. Cilia are not influenced by nerve impulses. There is absence of nerve impulse. The mucus secreting goblet cells and deep serous glands means sweat gland, are present in trachea. So remember, where goblet cells and serous glands are present in trachea and bronchi, but are absent in bronchioles and alveoli. So remember now this, that goblet cells and serous glands are present in trachea and bronchi but are absent in bronchio and alveoli. And cilia is a major property in the excretion of mucus because it has the capacity to tap the foreign particles in the hair follicles. Which things are absent, which things are present, do remember from this histological structure, okay? Now next, pleura and pleural cavity. The lungs are covered by pleura, which consist of 2 layers. Now pleura is the supporting membrane of respiratory system. Now pleura is also of 2 types. First is parietal pleura, is the outer layer which lies on the inner side of chest wall. Don't get confused. Parietal pleura is the outer layer of the lungs, outer layer, but this one, but it lies here inside. Where I have done black, it lies there, but actually it is outer layer. Visceral pleura is the inner layer which covers the lung surface. Now all this lung surface will be covered by visceral pleura. Visceral pleura. There is a potential space between layers of pleura is called pleural activity, where there is space between parietal pleura and visceral pleura. The pleural cavity contains a small amount, about 2 milliliter of serous fluid, that is pleural fluid, which protects the lungs from the shock mechanism or in the case of accident. So serous fluid quantity is 2 ml, which is present in the pleural cavity, that is potential space between parietal and visceral pleura. The adhesive and inexpensive nature of fluid keeps the pleural layer together and helps the lung to slide easily on the chest wall. So inspiration, expiration, all these processes due to this pleural fluid. It makes the mechanism easier. Is it clear? Now comes the respiratory parenchyma. Each respiratory unit consists of one respiratory bronchial which opens into a number of alveolar ducts, and each alveolar duct in turn open into number of alveoli. Remember, each respiratory unit consists into respiratory bronchial, and from the respiratory bronchial it opens into alveolar ducts, and from alveolar ducts it's open into alveoli. These are parenchyma. The two lung contains about 300 million alveoli. Each alveolus, means single alveoli, has a diameter of about 0.2 micrometer. Remember this. The alveoli are surrounded by the pulmonary capillaries. The total area of the alveolar wall in contact with capillaries in both the lungs is about 70 meters square. Do remember both diameter and area. Area is 70 meters square between alveolar walls and capillaries, and diameter is 0.2 micrometer. Now we will describe the microscopic structure of alveolus. Each alveolus is lined by 2 types of epithelial cells. First is type 1 cells, that are flat cells with large cytoplasmic extensions and are the primary lining cells. So this squamous cell or pneumocyte 1, that is type 1 cells, this one, which are flat cells and primary. Type 2, that is granular pneumocyte, this one, are thicker. They were thin, this is thicker, and contain numerous lamellar inclusions bodies. These secrete surfactant. So remember, type 2, that is pneumocyte 2, type 2 cells secrete surfactant. Chapter will come in this unit only later on, surfactant. So this is pneumonocyte. This layer, which I have shown in the red color, this secretes surfactant. The alveolar wall also contains other special type of epithelial cells. First is pulmonary alveolar macrophages, PAM, which are active phagocytic cells, means which eat the foreign particle. Phagocytosis is the process that is which is known as engulfing. That is PAM. This is capillary. Then comes the plasma cells, which form and secrete immunoglobulins for the defense mechanism. Because immunoglobulins has all in that only. Then amine precursor uptake and decarboxylation, APUD cells, which store and secrete many biological active peptides. Example, vasoactive intestinal peptide, VIP, and substance P. Remember this point, it's IMP, amine precursor uptake and decarboxylation. They secrete active peptides. Example is VIP and substance P. Mast cells, which contains heparin, various lipids, histamine, and various proteases that participate in allergic reactions. We have seen a mast cell is generally for the allergic reactions, which contain heparin, histamine. And communication between two alveoli occurs through small pores. Remember this. And that pore is known as pores of Cohen. Where two alveoli communicate is known as pores of Cohen. So these were endothelial cells. See in the figure. Then connective tissue, interstitial space, this one, and alveolar macrophages. Clear? Now we will talk about blood supply. Conducting airway is supplied by the systemic blood, whereas the respiratory zone of the lung is supplied by deoxygenated blood. Why respiratory zone? Because it has no exchange of gases, also not dead space, so it will have venous blood, that is deoxygenated blood, coming through pulmonary arteries to lungs. It comes from pulmonary artery to lungs. Blood is oxygenated in lungs and returned to left atrium via pulmonary veins, that we know. You have seen the structure of heart. Now talking about innervation, parasympathetic fiber pass through the vagus nerve, that is 10th cranial nerve, pass to the vagus nerve. The stimulation causes bronchoconstrictions, that is constriction of bronchi, and increase bronchial secretion via muscarinic receptors. Remember the name of receptor present on the skin. And the nerve endings are also activated by leukotrienes, irritants, chemical example carbon monoxide, lead, NO2, that is nitrogen dioxide, hydrocarbon, even by cool air. So parasympathetic fibers do what? Bronchoconstriction, and it has receptors on the screen present, and it also has nerve endings like leukotrienes, irritants, chemicals. Now note, remember, okay? Bronchial smooth muscle tone has circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm means 24/7 sleep cycle, sleep wake cycle. That is, tone is maximum when in the morning 6 am, that is maximum bronchoconstriction, and minimum, that is maximum bronchodilation, in the evening 6 pm, that is opposite. When the maximum bronchoconstriction, at that time minimum bronchodilation. When the maximum bronchodilation, at that time minimum bronchoconstriction, that is 6 am to 6 pm. Sympathetic nerve supplying the lungs when stimulated cause bronchodilation and decrease bronchial secretion via adrenergic receptor, that is predominantly beta 2 receptors. Now sympathetic nerves do what? They causes bronchodilation and it decreases the bronchial secretions. Non-cholinergic and non-adrenergic innervations, and the stimulation of this ending result in bronchodilation due to release of VIP. We have seen earlier VIP. Or forget it. Vasoactive intestinal peptide. So it does the bronchodilation, and it releases vasoconstricting insulin peptide, that is VIP. Again note it. It has been observed that in large number of bronchial asthma patients, VIP is absent. Efferents from the lung pass through vagi. There is no. Now talking about the functions of respiratory system. Respiratory functions. The main function of the respiratory system is general and lung. In particular is exchange of gases between atmosphere and blood. So exchange of gases is one of the IMP function of the respiratory system. Non-respiratory functions now we will see. Besides the respiratory functions, the respiratory system performs many important non-respiratory functions, which includes functions observed by lung defense mechanism. First function is to lung defense mechanism. That is immunoglobulin A, that is IgA, is secreted by the bronchial secretion and protects against the respiratory infections. So IgA is secreted by bronchial secretions is there. So hence it avoids respiratory infections. It tries better to avoid the respiratory infections. Ciliary escalator action is an important defense system against the airborne infection. As we have seen earlier about the cilia, I told now you will see that it will see like this there. They trap the foreign particles. So they have the ciliary accelerated mechanism. This is for airborne infection. Even COVID can be included in the ciliary accelerated action in an airborne function. The dust particles in the inhaled head are often laden with bacteria. While passing through the repeatedly branched bronchial tree, the dust particles and the bacteria are caught in the mucus layer present at the mucosal surface of respiratory passage. We have seen in the bronchial regeneration that diameter whose less than 2 to 10, they are trapped in that way, whose diameter is greater than 10 is trapped in that way. So it occurs in this and are moved up towards pharynx by the rhythmic upward beating action of cilia and swallowed, and then final cilia that is moved to pharynx. Cigarette smoke disturbs the ciliary function. So now let us see in the diagram. Yes. This is cilia. This is dust particles which are trapped. This is goblet cells, that is mucus secreting, which are present in the alveoli and we have seen now. And this is columnar epithelial cells, made up of columnar epithelial cells. We have seen earlier goblet cells and are present in trachea and bronchi. So you can write also, so you can easily remember trachea and bronchi. So now next function is pulmonary alveolar macrophages. Play an important role in defense system. This also play an important defense system. Being actively phagocytic cells. So macrophages are phagocytic, engulfing cells. They ingest the inhaled bacteria which we inhale into day-to-day life, routine life, which are cannot be seen with the naked eye, or ultimately we are inhaling, that are done by macrophages, alveolar macrophages and small particles. Help in processing inhaled antigens for immunological attack like COVID-19. Pulmonary alveolar macrophages is shortly known as PM and secrete substance that attract polymorphonuclear cells. Remember this to the lungs. Its attraction is the polymorphonuclear cells, PMN. By some secretions, they stimulate granulocyte and monocyte formation in the bone marrow. So also PAM has the secretion of granulocyte and monocyte because of the defense system in the bone marrow. Cough reflex. The laryngeal, tracheal and bronchial mucous membrane contains vagal efferent terminals coming from the outside efferent, which acts as irritant receptors. Stimulation of these receptors by chemical or mechanical excessive mucus inadvertently inhaled foodstuff produces a bout of coughing, which helps in expulsion of foreign particles. Means when you cough, when you sneeze, it is the process behind mechanism in expulsion of foreign particles, that is excessive mucus, any other foodstuff. etc. The cough reflex is also an mechanism that helps. Applied physiology. Remember the criteria well-being. In Catangles Syndrome, patient ciliary mobility may be congenitally absent due to the absence of axonal dynein and ATPs. Axonal dynein and ATPs are absent in the Catangles Syndrome patient. This condition is also associated with infertility due to lack of sperm motility. So this is can include infertility as well as absence of ciliary mobility. Both mobility and motility is absent in this syndrome. Now next is function resolved by pulmonary circulation, that is blood. First is reservoir for left ventricle. When left ventricle output becomes transiently greater than the systemic venous returns the blood stored in the pulmonary circulation, helps in maintaining the left ventricular output for few strokes. To make the left ventricle output more and to remain for the few strokes same output, left ventricle acts as a reservoir, that is the storage, throughout the pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation acts as a filter and filter out particles from blood, which may include small fibrin, blood clots, detached cancer cells, fat cells, gas globules, agglutinated RBCs, mass of platelets, debris, etc. from the stored food. That is excretion of waste product, in short you can say. The removal of fluid from alveoli, that is because of low pulmonary hydrostatic pressure, that is outside the lung, the fluid entering the alveoli is absorbed by the capillaries. Always in hydrostatic outside the lung, if the pressure is less, inside alveoli everything is absorbed through capillaries, and this protects the gas exchange function of lung and opposes transduction of fluid from capillaries to alveoli. The fluid will there in the lungs, so the fluid secretion will start in the lungs. It will affect entire mechanism, entire working of the lungs. So to avoid this, capillaries absorb everything from the alveoli and it helps in opposition of transduction of fluid. Now role in absorption of drugs. Certain drugs that rapidly pass through the alveolar capillary barrier by diffusion are administered by inhalation. For example, anesthetic gases, aerosol, other bronchodilators. This type of drugs are also directly absorbed. And now last is metabolic functions of lungs. Metabolic means catabolic as well as anabolic, that is destruction and formation. Both function is done. First is surfactant produced in the lungs play an important role in respiration. We have seen now pneumocyte 2 produce the surfactant. We have seen the microscopic structure of alveoli. Then conversion of angiotensin 1 to 2 is performed by the enzyme angiotensin converting enzyme ACE, present in the pulmonary capillary endothelium. Remember this. ACE helps in the conversion of angiotensin 1 to 2 via pulmonary capillary endothelium. Then inactivation partially or completely of many vasoactive substances present in the blood is done by the capillary endothelial cells as they pass through pulmonary circulation. Many substances, vasoactive substances present in the blood pass through the pulmonary circulation, pass through the capillary endothelial cells. So they inactive partially or completely. Vasoactive substances are helpful for the excretory system. You will learn in detail. These substances include like bradykinin, serotonin, some prostaglandins, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and such type of all chemical or hormonal responses to inactive. Even respiratory system has their role. Because why respiratory system has the role? Due to pulmonary circulation is the reason, but the main reason is capillary endothelial cells because they are present in the respiratory system. Due to that, they play the role of partially or completely inactivation of hormonal mechanisms. Amount of serotonin and norepinephrine reaching the systemic circulation is decreased by the lungs. See, decrease of the substance is also done. Vasoactive substances that pass through the lungs without being metabolized, including epinephrine, dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, and angiotensin 1. All these hormones are metabolized before passing to lungs. Then fibrinolytic mechanism present in the lung lysis clot in the pulmonary vessels. That is done the lysis of the clot. Then storage of hormone and certain biological active peptides is done in the APUD we have seen earlier. APUD cells, nerve fiber present in the alveoli. This substance include VIP, vasoactive inverted peptide, substance P, Opiopeptides, choleocytokinin, pancreozymin, CC, PZ, and somatostatin. This is gastric hormone, if you remember. And these substances are later released into systemic circulation. So even the storage of such hormones are done by respiratory system, and whenever needed, they provide in the systemic circulation. Do remember. And last is the functions observed by reserved respiratory muscles observed, that is laughing and singing. So here physiological anatomy of the respiratory system is ended. I hope entire anatomy, functions, everything of this system is cleared. You can watch the video twice to thrice if you are thinking you have any doubt. In case of doubt, you can ask it in the comment section. We are always ready to help you. Any medicos can ask, whether it is medical, paramedical, because solving a doubt does not need a stream. And to gain a knowledge, even any student can gain. It is not like that only a medical student can gain the knowledge. Okay? So you can see entire video. I tried my best to explain this respiratory system one by one. The videos will come in the series. Previous videos were of the skeletal system, part 3. Now part 3 section 2, part 3 section 3 will come. Again respiratory system will come. Everything will run accordingly. To run the simultaneously is not possible, but in the series form, each and every videos will be coming. You just stay tuned. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day.